Actually, I see some new faces tonight, which is awesome. We love it when we have new people join us, and of course, familiar faces are always such a delight as well. If I haven't met you yet, my name is Amy Hartle. I'm the Vice President of the Board of Directors for VCN, and I am also a breast cancer survivor. So it's kind of like the old hair club commercial tonight, right? Not only the owner, I'm also a client. I'm positive. I was diagnosed at 41. I just hit my 5-year mark. In fact, I had a follow-up today where my doctor said, was like, hey, if you don't want to come every 6 months anymore, we can start doing yearly. Same option and kind of an exciting graduation. So I also work in our breast cancer community professionally. I'm an oncology massage and manual lymphatic drainage therapist. I practice downtown and I work specifically with the breast cancer community. So I kind of live and breathe this world. Tonight, I am very, very happy to introduce our speaker. I'm imagining that everyone here is excited about the idea of engaging in a little mindfulness, learning about it, maybe taking even one good nugget home. We live in a chaotic world, and that's regardless of a breast cancer experience. And, we live in a fast-paced world. And I know personally, I'm loving that this is our topic this month, because I know personally, I find this time of year to be a time when it's hard, it's winter. And really, I would love to hibernate. I wish that as the animal I am as a human being, that I could slow down and not have to keep up with the pace of society, same pace year round. And I think engaging a little bit of proactive mindfulness is a great way to honor that and to take a little respite for ourselves. So our speaker, Julia Kress, is a pillar of our community. Come on over, Julia. I've had the opportunity and the pleasure to know Julia in a number of capacities over the last many years. She is I'm going to let her do her formal introduction because there's just way too much. But she's been in the health and wellness space for most of her life in one capacity or another. And I was really lucky when I received my diagnosis. Julia and I were both working in the same wellness center, and I did a yoga therapy session with her prior to my surgery, and I still hold on to some of what I learned in that session. And so I'm just honored to have her here tonight. I'm going to let Julia take it away from there. So please welcome Julia. There's a microphone.
Oh no, I can project really well. I'll move that over there, and then I'll probably get a chair too at some point for practice.
Yeah.
Thank you. So before I launch into beyond my name, I would like to give you a little experience of what we're going to dive into in the second half of this presentation. So you're all sitting, so I don't have to say take a seat, but if you do have a spoon or something in your hand, if you want to put it down, if you're really hungry, just keep going. And then move away from the table as much as you're comfortable with. I know sometimes when you're back to back, and you don't need to look at me right now, because actually what I'm going to ask you to do, if you're comfortable, is close your eyes. And if you don't want to close your eyes, you could look at the tablecloth or the floor or the wall. But I'd like to start with an experience first. So we have somewhere for some of this information to land. And so in the very beginning moments of what we might refer to as a mindfulness practice, a lot of people hear that phrase lately. What we're literally doing is building some awareness. And this awareness is something that we can continue to build in, not just through this evening, but through the rest of our lives. There's no place where there isn't an opportunity for building awareness and mindfulness. And I'll give more examples later. But right now, we have the experience of sitting where we are. And being in this room collectively, which has its own qualities to it. So there's some certain sounds in the room. So as we become more quiet. We can maybe hear the furnace, the air. You might feel some movement and hear some movement in the room. And then initially, if you're not used to doing anything like this, it could feel strange to be quiet in a room full of people, right? Without anything dire occurring. But that's exactly the platform for this awareness-based work, is we start where it's most neutral. And so we start to become more aware of how we are feeling in this chair. And if any rearrangement needs to take place in order to settle in a little bit more. We're not going to sleep here, of course, right? But to some degree, we want to be able to relax our bodies. So what shape might your body start to take with that idea? And in this moment in time, it's okay to relax. And maybe you have a mental something that arises that says no, you can't do that right now, which is okay. Perhaps there's a strong physical pain in your body that prevents the overall experience of relaxing, and you simply notice that. There's probably a portion of your back that's held by the chair. And a part of the base of your hips, as well as the back of your legs. And these are all normal, mundane sensations. And yet when we heighten our awareness around them, we recognize there's something to be felt here. And in this invitation of sorts around becoming more aware, and perhaps also relaxing, right? The sensation that you notice could be helpful. Well, maybe I could lean back into this chair some more, or let my shoulders drop, or my arms rest either on my legs or on the table. And then in this moment, all of us have the feet that touch the floor that are held in shoes. And we notice that. Now, what you also might be noticing is how you breathe. I didn't give you that instruction, but it's quite natural when we start to get a little quieter in our outward activity and become more inward. And this is another foundational point of mindful awareness, is noticing, one, we're breathing. That's good. Check. But then also maybe we adjust the way we breathe just for a little while, maybe just 1 minute. We let our inhale and exhale get just a little bit deeper. And if this is very new to you, that could be strange. And know that that's okay. Anything that's new to you is going to feel awkward at first and maybe strange. At the most, it could be offensive on some level, you never know. But in part, what I'm going to be presenting to you tonight is also a philosophy of curiosity. And also maybe compassion. So let's just take 3 more breaths. And then if your eyes have been closed, you'll open them just a little bit. So you're somewhat turning your eyes downward and allowing some light into the eyes, which might find, you might find it a bit shocking after closing your eyes, right? And then you start to lift your eyes to take in more of the room. You don't have to look at anybody in particular, but you do that. And then we come back into the room collectively. All right, so I'll stand so it's a little easier for you to see and hear me. So thank you for doing that with me, because that's what you did. So that was a little bit of introduction to what awareness-based and mindfulness-based practices are. using our mundane level of experience, which is an everyday experience, and somewhat catalyzing on that, building on it, recognizing the qualities of whatever that experience is, and then what do we need in that moment? So there's a certain amount of curiosity and question, right? Without expectation. Do you need a napkin? Putting food on my chest is a sure thing I do often. So does anyone have any feedback right now from what their experience was? Was anyone surprised if they relaxed? Yeah,
Peaceful.
there was a peacefulness. Okay, good. Did anyone want to jump up under their feet and run out the door? You can admit that if you want. Because that's part of what can be experienced as well, right? Like, oh, I'm noticing more than I want to, and I don't want to do that, right? Much along the lines of what Amy was saying towards the end of your talk around hibernation, right? And I'm seeing a lot more recognition that this is a natural time of quieting down. And when we don't follow our own nature, we actually end up hurting ourselves. So becoming more aware of that, I'm recognizing more people doing that. And it's like, why am I rushing? Or like New Year's resolutions in January? Please. Are you serious? It's a really bad idea. I don't know who came up with it, but I would fire them. I'm sure they're long gone. So we can't fire them, but it's a spring thing. Yeah. And so what you can do at this time of year is consider like any gardener. And I have to tell you that I've never wanted to be a gardener, but there's been a lot of changes at my house, and also with the environment and how things are changing with the environment. I have become a reluctant gardener in the last 4 years, but my mother is very proud. So we were building pollinator gardens and, you know, everything that will feed whoever wants to come, kind of gardens and whatnot. So what I've learned in using this metaphor as gardening is you don't start gardening when the weather's nice, you actually start now. And the idea of what you start now is you consider what is it that you need to grow that you can grow, and then you start to collect those resources. So whether that's what you need to do that with, as in seeds or soil or whatnot, you might actually start putting some seeds in soil in the house and so on. And so this could be a time of year where you consider, what is it that I'm looking to grow into? And, you know, instead of let go of, right? So much resolution is about letting go of. Again, this is a time of year where we need to hang on. It's cold out. It's not a good idea to, whatever it is, let go of too much, except if there's a lot of stuff in your closets. That could feel good to let go of that. So anyways, I'm a huge advocate for following natural rhythms and seeing where the human has tried to push against natural rhythms in order to succeed or accomplish. And what we end up doing really is backsliding down. So with that kind of cue, mindfulness-based practices are really about helping us tap into what are our natural rhythms. Maybe how have we ignored them? And how can we start embracing them? And that takes some time. So I was introduced to these practices 33 years ago. And that's why I can say most of my life, more than half of my lifespan. I was introduced to these practices, and it was first through a book that my mother had given me. I, at the time, was an aerobic instructor in the 80s, which I always like to bring up because that was fun. That was so fun. So if you didn't live in the 80s, I'm sorry, you really missed out. But my daughter is actually wearing leg warmers from the 80s that I had that I've given to her. And I like to tell her about my Reeboks and what I matched and headband and neon K-pop, the music. Yeah, the music is just rich, you know, for those of you that enjoyed that time. And there was a great female run gym at the time called was it Elaine Powers? Elaine Powers is where I started. I know, come on. Yeah, so any of you, sorry, I'm really revving it up here. But that's where I got my start in wellness, actually. I started going there when I was 14 because my mother was seeing that I needed some means of stress management. And it was one of the best places to go because I was surrounded by people that were taking care of themselves in particular ways. And then I ended up actually starting to work for them a year later. So even at the age of 15, I started teaching right away. And I will forever be grateful for the people that, you know, obviously were watching me and said, you know, you're going to start working under the table, but we think you'd be really good at this. And I'll never forget my first class teaching. It felt like, you know, just so natural. One of the most natural things I've ever done. So in a way, I started teaching at that time how to see, how to feel, and how to be part of community in this direction. And then started moving towards holistic health at the age of 20. And then I moved to a community-based space in Pennsylvania, a larger institution, the Himalayan Institute of Yoga Science and Philosophy in Pennsylvania. And I lived there for about 8 years. So I really immersed myself in yoga science and philosophy. And I was fortunate at that time to become very good friends with the doctor who ran the Center for Health and Healing, which immediately got me started into how is yoga therapeutic and understanding. Because a lot of what we've seen in yoga, unfortunately, that's changing too, is exercise-based, sweaty-based, you know, kind of practices, which isn't how yoga ever started. And it's fine that it is that way because a lot of people come to it through that appeal. But really, yoga is a scope of practice that works with every level of our being, starting with philosophy. And some of the philosophy I've already mentioned. Curiosity and compassion is part of the philosophy of yoga. Movement is, of course, part of yoga, but it's a very small part of it. And in the realm of therapeutics, we're looking at using movement in a way that serves function, guides awareness, but then also builds on that. And it's something that you're meant to be able to do through your whole life. So up until this point in my I want to say yoga therapy career, my oldest client was 87 when she started. And then the last time I saw her was at 91. And in those 3 years that we were together, she built up from a 10-minute capacity to an hour every day by herself. And right in the beginning, she was super skeptical. So I like to share this story because she didn't want anything to really do with me or yoga. It was her daughter that brought me to her house. I used to go to homes and visit people in their homes and work with them there because it was a more comfortable place often for people. And sometimes there was mobility issues or whatnot. So her daughter asked me to come to her mom's home and we sat at the kitchen table and she frowned at me the whole time. And it was fine. I was cool with that. And she said, well, we'll see. And I said, okay. So I left a folder of information with her about what we may or may not do. And the ball was in her court. And it was 6 months later that she called me and she said, I think I'm ready. And I said, okay. So we started with 10 minutes. And then we built up into that. And part of her practice was breath awareness and noticing how she held tension in her body and mind in different ways. And so that's why we started with 10 minutes, because noticing all of that can be really difficult, you know, especially when you get up into your years. You've built up a great resistance, let's say. I want it this way, I don't want it that way, right? And this woman was right, she was little and petite, but boy, she's and then gradually she loved her practice because it became her own. And that's what I try to inspire everyone to do, is to cultivate some sort of movement, breath, relaxation practice that becomes your own. And I will send Amy some resources for you to help build into that, whatever that might be. And then she was bragging to all of her friends and to her doctors that she does yoga, like before she didn't even want the word in her house. And now she's telling everybody she knew. So at that point, we graduated away from each other and she set sail just on her own. So it was beautiful. And I like to share that story because it's okay to be skeptical. Especially when you've seen marketing or this or that, or maybe had a bad experience or whatever it might be. It's okay. Right. And I think it's actually healthy to be skeptical because then you're more curious to see, well, what's in it for me, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, does that make sense?
yeah, it does.
Good,
Yeah, it
good, I'm
does.
glad, I'm glad. So I've been teaching for a long time. I don't know how many years it is now. I think 28 years, yoga. And I like doing it in different ways and in different places because I learn from that. One of my most awkward places, I'll tell you, was I was teaching in a post office in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Yes, very interesting place. I was extremely curious, and especially the way people came dressed. And I didn't have a lot of experience at that time. I was only 10 years into teaching, and I was in basically a workroom. And women came in very short skirts and high heels, and yeah, it was one of those, what am I going to do and why am I here? Yeah, but we made it work. I made it work, and there was no floor work or forward bending. You always have to read the room, who's with you. Yeah, and then the other place was in a large cafeteria in a work site where everyone was eating lunch and talking loudly, and I was so confused because I was like, are you sure I'm supposed to be here? Made it work for like a table of people who were interested, but anyhow, what I also like to share with you is that these are practices that can be done wherever you are. So quite literally, here, as we've already practiced and we'll do more. I do teach at Roswell at the resource center there. And so we do like 10-minute breathing and relaxation or awareness-based practices there. Some of the practices can be done sitting in a car, which I think mindfulness while you're driving is a huge asset, especially since COVID. I'm not sure what happened, but a lot of different interesting driving techniques out there. I try to stay curious and less judgmental about, even though they usually don't end well. I just started curious. Let me back up and move over here. But more so when you're at home on your own. These are practices to build upon and use for your own health and wellness. I started rereading a book that I haven't picked up in years called Yoga is Medicine, just a couple days ago. And it's always good to come back to certain texts or whatnot. And in part because we're starting a new teacher training. So I run the teacher training programs for the Himalayan Institute of Buffalo here. We have 2 different ones that we run. And I wanted to refresh a little bit because I teach all the anatomy and physiology of this training. What are the benefits or what is said about the benefits? I mean, I know them, but have I missed any on the list? And there's about 50 on the list that I won't regurgitate, but there's some that I want to bring up because a lot of times the skepticism is met with why? Why should I bother? Why should I do any of these things? And so knowing some of the benefits I think are helpful. And then again, we're going to go into a practice in a little while so that you can actually feel them. So some of that of peaceful or relaxed, I would like to build upon. So you have an example for yourself. So one of the benefits of what we can call instead of yoga is body-mind practices, because really anything in which you are working with your body and you're building awareness around how you're working with your body, which includes working with your breath, are going to have similar benefits. And so one of the main benefits is getting to know ourselves better. I can't express that enough, and I will express it in different ways, but how we get to know ourselves is actually through a felt experience of kind of inwardness, but also, outer. So how do we get to know ourselves in the outer realm? We might notice we hold a lot more tension in our shoulders than we thought. Right? But then why? Because I don't just do this because I don't have anything else to do. Right? There's a reason behind it, right? So it might be the kind of idea of I don't want something to occur. So I'm going to do this and imagine that that's going to help me not receive whatever it is that I don't want. Right? Does this help anything as you're watching me do this? It probably looks uncomfortable. It feels uncomfortable to you while I'm holding my shoulders like this. Yeah, it feels uncomfortable to you too to do it when you're not aware of it. So we learn how to drop. Right. And there's other places within our body that we can start to feel into where we closed out, we shut down. I have another actually adult in her 80s that I'm working with, and real shrewd woman. I mean, at first I thought she was going to walk out during our first session together because she kept like kind of cutting me off and saying, no, what the heck are you talking? She'd say things like that. I'd be like, okay, rearrange. We'll go back this way, this way. But one of the things she shared with me in our second session was, and this may not be an isolated incident, I think it's more common than we remember or recall, is that she said, my mother used to tell me to suck my stomach in all the time, and that being fat wasn't good. And so we just sat there with that for a little while. Like we let it, she spoke it, we let it be in the room. And I asked her, well, how did that make you feel? She goes, well, always less than. And then I kept my stomach tight almost my whole life, because in part, what we were working with was some anxiety that she had. And not feeling in her body. She actually told me, I've divorced my body. I divorced so-and-so and I divorced my body. We had a little laugh about that. I'm like, okay, well, we're not going to get back with so-and-so, but we are going to get back with your body. And in part, it's going to be to soften that abdomen of yours. And so we approach that knowing that there's going to be fear. There's going to be regurgitation from the past, those past messages, and there's going to be an unknown. What does that mean to soften the head? Right? That may resonate with some of you. I know it resonated with me, and that's been a message for a long time in the culture. And so in part, our breathing helps us become more sensitive to how we've, one of my teachers calls it, how we've eaten the messages that weren't so helpful, right? Like sucking in your stomach. It's a terrible. I mean, even if you're trying to put on too tight of pants, which I'd say you shouldn't be wearing those pants. Your pants, stretchy pants, it's good, right? So there's absolutely no reason to suck your stomach in I can't think of anything. And maybe something will dawn on me another time, but I can't think of any reason to suck your stomach in. I mean, unless maybe you're trying to get into a tight place, but then you let it go again. It's a very short period of time. But there's other tensions that we're likely to hold in our body that actually are coming from the central part of our being, our nervous system, right? So we hear something and then our nervous system will respond, or we feel something and our nervous system responds. And so befriending our nervous system is a lot of what we're doing in these mind-body practices. And that's not too often. Fortunately, more of these things are being taught from preschool to nursing homes, so everything in between. So that's good. We're living in an opportune time to unwind, to undo, and then to grow in the way we want to, which means, I want to say, living more largely in ourselves, taking up more space, right? Not diminishing ourselves. So that's one aspect of the benefit of mind-body practices, is this ability to feel into ourselves, which I want to tell you sometimes is scary, sometimes is emotional. There's times in yoga classes where people start to cry because there are things being felt that they haven't felt in a very long time. And that's fine. It's just normal, right? And during teacher training, we have it all the time. And because teacher training is such an intense time, we're with each other either for 9 months or a year and a half, depending on the one that you're doing. And usually around the 5th month, there's a lot of tears, right? Because people are undoing so much of the programming that they didn't really want to take on. This isn't who I want to be anymore. And it's never too late. And so that's what I want to tell you too, is that it's never too late to be who you want to be. I mean, you may not be a prima ballerina, or maybe you will. I don't know. Who am I to say? Right? But it's never too late to live more fully in your body, and that's what I think comes about through these practices that can be meaningful, purposeful, and guide us towards new relationships. So a lot of what's been studied in neuroscience in the last 30 years, which in part has come through the clinical work at VA systems and whatnot, is how people experience, let's say, antisocial behavior, medical issues, real health issues in the mind as well as in the body, because of this denial of feeling, this denying of reality. And so it started in the VA system because they had a population that they needed to work with, that some were staying and in these hospital situations. And some of these therapists were saying, how come talk therapy isn't working? How come they're not better? Because it doesn't happen just through the mind. It happens through our entire system. Right. And so as they started to study our actual neurology, they realized there's a lot going on in our bellies that we haven't talked about. And it was through that work that they started to discover breath work and movement and even theater, and how that helped a lot of these individuals that were in the VA system start to come on and heal from what ailed them. And I have to say, in the last week, I'm not a football fan, I just have to admit in this area. I don't like football. I hate the sport. Okay. However, what I've seen is an incredible expression of humanity, natural humanity, and how much we all needed that. Right. And so I've been so moved to read the stories and listen to more things. And, I was actually, my mom was watching it on Sunday and I just peeked in. I'm like, how are they doing? Good. So my care level went way up. But because I saw these people as human beings, and not that they weren't prior to that, but there wasn't anything that ever sparked my interest, unfortunately, and their humanity until this very difficult situation. But I was so proud, I want to say, of if I can do it this way, call it the male race, to show what they showed and to talk about what they talked about, because I felt like we all could drop them.
It was amazing.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, so much to learn. So much we could talk about that for a while, but that's in part where the mind body practices come in, is how do we re-engage in a way that's natural? How do we re-engage with ourselves, and maybe in a way that we've never engaged, right? Or maybe we remember doing it when we were 5. And that's okay, right? Because we still got a body, we still got a mind, we're still breathing, we still got resources to tap into. So with that, I'd like us to do a little practice. Is everyone okay? Okay with that? Okay. So I'm actually going to have us spread out a little bit. So those that are in the chairs in front, maybe move over to the side some. And then those that are in the back, maybe move back some. Now you also are, what do I want to say? Invited to not participate. So if you don't want to move or do anything, that's fine. But I'd like you to have just a little bit more room around you, especially this way. Yeah, that's right, that way. Yeah, she was leaving. She knew. If you want to do this, if you want to be able to do this. Yeah. Okay, yes, we got a lot of room here. Just move. Yeah, good. I'm gonna put my thing up here. Okay, so, yeah. Okay, so what we're first gonna do is sit up if we can with our back, not really touch, I mean, a little bit might touch the chair, but we're not leaning. And we find our feet flat on the floor. Good. And then I'm going to ask you, you don't have to gaze at me. You can gaze forward or close your eyes anytime you'd like to. Let's take our arms down at the sides. Just notice how that feels. So even, yeah, if there's a chair in your way, move it. This is a time of choice. Okay, and then you're gonna start to take the arms out to the side as much as it's comfortable. Maybe the arms go above the head. And then back out to the side and down. And that's the movement we're gonna continue to do. So on the lift of the arms, it's an inhale. And on a lowering of the arms, it's an exhale. And as we repeat, you're able to notice more. So again, you might gaze forward, you might close your eyes. You can look at me if you want to, but there's nothing much to see here. So you're just raising and lowering. And the simple movement, which may not feel so simple, depending on the state of the shoulders or if you've had any surgery in and around the chest, right? Is actually not just for our shoulders, arms, or chest, but is for our breathing. And the breathing is the most important. As we emphasize the inhale and exhale, we actually increase our vital capacity in our lungs. And that helps us build resilience. So next time the arms drop down, keep them there, let them rest. And then place the hands on your thighs and lean back into your chair for a moment. And you take some time. And the time that we take is part of assimilating. Assimilating what's just taken place. It may not seem like that big of a deal, and yet maybe it was. Allowing yourself the space and time to notice. And sometimes this is a gift of not being in your own home, even though I know people are at home. Maybe you got your own private space right now. Setting aside space, setting aside time. That in itself can be the healing set. So keeping the hands on our thighs now, feet flat. I'm going to ask you to take your torso forward. That's your upper body. And go as far forward as you can. And then you're going to push off of your thighs and go backward. And go back just to the degree where it feels useful. The head might go back a little bit, but never too much. And then we keep doing that. So we're kind of like that little 70s little bird who used to, remember, dip down into the water. Give them all the Spencers. Exhaling as you go forward and inhaling as you go backward. And you're linking your movement with your breath to build more awareness. So this movement engages our abdominal and back muscles. And when we engage those muscles alternately in strengthening and stretching, we have better posture. And better posture helps us breathe better. When we breathe better, a whole lot of other things are better. Digestion, elimination, the overall feeling sense in our bodies. Just try it one more time in both directions. Notice which one you like better. All right. And then when you come to center, pause again. Lean into the chair, let the chair support you. Maybe you feel warmer. Notice where your shoulders are. Is there a tension that you can let go of here? Sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes it's no. Again, recognizing that it's all fine. Then either keeping this lean here or lifting the back away just a little bit, depending on how you feel. And just start to turn our head from side to side. Nice and slow, and this is usually the time when closing the eyes is more beneficial, so you don't get too dizzy. Our head can get very fixed in a position in our day, and that can come about because of a work environment, because of habit, even just reading a book, innocently reading a book. So as we move our head from side to side, we change the structure in our neck. We change the circulation in these tissues, which again, changes feeling. And goodness knows, as I mentioned earlier, emotion can be held anywhere and it can surprise us. So allow yourself to be a little bit surprised. When the head comes to center, now a bit more slowly, ear towards shoulder, just to the degree again that it's useful. First with some repetition. This is always the harder movement for me, about you. And you see, if it is difficult, are you tightening anywhere else in your body? Our body is meant to be used throughout the day, worked. It doesn't necessarily have to be a formal exercise, but our body is part of nature. Bring your head to center. And then very small circles make with the head, very small. You never want to take the head back too far. Moving in such a way where your breath can be smooth. Maybe that's something you're also feeling into more, this experience of breath. About 3 times in one direction and then reverse it in the other direction. Maybe you hear sounds in your body, clicks, right? This time of year, our body tends to make a lot more noise, and that's okay too. Let the head come to center. If it's comfortable, lean forward on your thighs. I always refer to this as the serious talk pose, right? I don't know why we do this, but I'm sure there's a reason. It's a little more grounded, right? Better than standing up. So this is meant to offer you a soft stretch for your back. If leaning on your thighs is too much, you could put your hands on the table in front of you. Or again, simply stay where you are. If you'd like to go farther because your back can tolerate it, you could take the legs a little wider, make room to either put your hands on your shoes or on the ground. Just watching if you've eaten a lot just recently, to not squeeze too much in your belly. Yeah. So you want to honor what's there. Don't push on the chip. All right. So our practice is never about have to or shoulds or someday. It's about feeling what's possible right now. So wherever you may be, whether you're leaning back in your chair, touching the table, leaning on your thighs, or touching the ground. What's possible to feel into and to allow. One of my clients said today, you know, there's so much stuff, commercialism about, she was talking about menopause, about how to not feel what you're feeling instead of just allowing, because I'm about allowing. And I said, well, allowing doesn't sell anything. Right? Yeah, there's no consumerism in allowing, there's letting go. All right, so now let's come back up and then slide your hips forward slightly in your chair and lean back. Maybe walk your feet forward a bit more. So you're not slumping in your chair, but you're also not upright in an abrupt way. Rest the shoulders and the arms. Again, eyes may close or you might gaze in front of you. And so going into this idea of allowing, that feeds back into Amy's conversation around this time of year, that we're actually meant to sleep more. We're meant to conserve our energy. And so how does that land with you right now? Perhaps the old messaging of not allowing rises up and you hear it in a particular voice. It could be not yours, it could be someone else's. And it's okay. You know, we're all a product of our programming. Whether it was self-induced or other induced, it's usually a somewhat messy combination of both. But in this moment, we have an opportunity to come to just what is right now, what is available to us right now. Can you feel your body breathe? And the breath is the basis for all of these practices, for the movements, as well as organized thought. So let's say we're going to look at not thinking a whole lot, but feeling more. What we would do would feel into the quality of our inhale and maybe how we notice it through our nose and our lungs. And the quality of our exhale, how we notice that as an emptying in our lungs and moving out through our nose. And we tend to focus on the nose for breathing for many strong reasons. One is that the nose is part of our respiratory system, and it helps filter, warm, and slow the breath down. And in several studies, they've shown that when we practice nose breathing more, it lessens sleep apnea. That's a big one. It increases our ability to focus and concentrate. And it changes inflammation markers, lowering blood pressure and heart rate. So just take another moment to notice this breath moving in and out of your nose. If your nose is very blocked, then of course you're not going to force that. You use your mouth. Then bring the hands to your abdomen in a way that's soft. So maybe one hand goes to the upper abdomen, one goes to the lower, they're both in the lower. So just find the part of your belly that's available to you where you can relax your elbows. Keep relaxing your back into the chair. And now I'm going to ask you to inhale a little bit more to the degree where you extend your abdomen just slightly. Again, being kind around if you have food here. And then squeeze the abdomen gently. Again, not pushing too much if you've eaten recently. And then do that a few more times. So what we are doing by expanding our abdomen on the inhale and contracting it on the exhale is using the abdominal muscles to assist the expansion of the lungs, as well as increase the circulation of blood flow in our internal organs here. Okay, so in our digestive organs, there's also organs of assimilation, taking in nutrients and storing them, as well as dispersal, moving nutrients to areas that need it, moving waste products down and out or into other areas of excretion. So let's do this just a few more times. This also is the home site of what's called the dorsal vagal nerve. And this is the VA system research coming forward, is that they've discovered this nuance of our nervous system that the vagal nerve has a lot of regulation over. So the dorsal vagal nerve is that nerve that comes behind our diaphragm, our abdominal breathing diaphragm, in front of our spine, and innervates all our internal organs. In short, this is an area that we call the gut brain. So now don't extend or contract anymore. Just simply hold the space with the warmth of your hands and allow that messaging to sink in. This is called my gut brain. What does that mean? This is the home site for intuition, which is underneath rational thought. It's the behind the scenes oomph or push towards knowing what we know, beyond knowledge-based skill. Although it is a skill that we build into. knowing ourselves from this level can be incredibly helpful. And it's often a place that we're shut down in. So how do we build tone in this space, in this nerve, is through breath and awareness. Good. All right, and then let's come forward in our chair. So we're gonna get a little bit more alert. We're gonna do just a few more practices and then I'll leave time for some questions. So hands on the thighs again, you're away from the back of your chair, and I'm gonna turn sideways so you can see why you wanna be away from the chair. So that you can tuck and round your pelvis and round your back towards the chair, and I'm sliding my hands to my knees. Then you're gonna go in the opposite direction. Slide your hands on your thighs to your hips, pull the elbows back, move the chest forward, head back. Now try this again, tucking and rounding on the exhale. And then going in the opposite direction on the inhale. So we call this cat-cow, seated cat-cow. So when we round our spine, it's like a cat being afraid, right? And then the cow pose, I won't go into that. All right, so let's try this 3 more times. So the essence of it is to move the spine. Beyond that is to move the entire core body, expanding the lungs in both directions, which enhances our vital capacity in our lungs. To change the circulatory force in and around our gut, our digestive and eliminatory organs, as well as help to nourish the tissues around our spine. So finishing up and coming to the upright position again. Roll the shoulders. Noticing that area that is easy to get very tight in. I call these the I don't want to muscles, or the no muscles, right? Go in the other direction. So there's often those areas that get triggered when the internal no arises. I don't want this, I don't want that. All right, and then come to center. And then we're gonna take a side bend. So I'm gonna show you a few different arm positions. One could be hands stay on the thighs, okay? Another arm position could be hand maybe goes behind the head, or maybe it goes alongside the head. Okay, so depending on the shoulder and the condition of the chest and the upper back, you choose one of those arm positions, either hand stays down, maybe behind the head or alongside the head. And then we're gonna go off to the opposite side. Yeah, there you go, that's it. Yeah, so you go away from this side that you're reaching. Yeah. And you keep your feet flat, you press down through your hips, and then don't hold your breath. Yeah, stay in there for a little while. So we're opening the sides of our rib cage, the sides of the lungs, into the waist and into the low back. And return to center, bring the hand down and pause. And then you're going to repeat on the other side. Now the arm position could be different on the other side, depending. I can keep both hands down and move away from that side. Again, your base is your hips and your feet. Hand could go to your rib cage even, behind the head or alongside the head. So no matter where you are in your position, you're trying to find the place that is yours, right? This is your body, your home base. We're looking again to befriend it, not to make it feel more wrong or bad. It's so easy to do that, isn't it? Oh, I can't do it like so-and-so. I'm bad at this. Okay, come back to center. Roll the shoulders again. Good, okay. And then we're gonna lean back into our chair just for, let's say 3 minutes, all right? And I'm gonna guide you through something. So hands rest on the thighs, either palms down or up. They can be on the table too. Eyes can be closed or open. We return to noticing what supports us. And that's a good thing to ask yourself regularly, what supports me in this moment? And so it could be a chair, it could be a couch and a person, it could be a space, it could be a technique, and so on, right? So it can be very physical, it could be energetic, can be emotional. So we feel our back in the chair and we feel our hips down in the chair and our feet on the floor. These are all foundational places from which our attention grows. We have our hands and arms in a particular way and we notice them. And then without changing the way we breathe, we allow ourselves to be aware of our breath. When the inhale enters, it creates a certain sense of fullness. And this brings in new energy, nourishment. That gets circulated through the entire body, top to bottom, center, and periphery. The exhalation carries away waste products from periphery and center and out. We have this symbiotic relationship with the space around us. We draw air in and we are nourished by it. We give back to that space. And if there are a bunch of trees in here, we could say we nourish those trees. We look to rest in the rhythm of our own breathing. And then the invitation will be to soften. Yeah, which may or may not happen. We'll start with the face. Focus around the forehead. Then try to bring some awareness to the eyes. To the jaw. So in the background is the awareness that we're supported where we are. Our body is breathing. And we're looking to release whatever's possible to be released at this time. Then feel in and around your neck and throat. Maybe you're able to let go there. It's not always easy when we're sitting up, but there's still an opportunity here. What about the shoulders again? The upper arms, the forearms and hands. Feel that energy of hands and arms. There's an energy that is always here and an awareness that is always here. But when we decide to pay attention, then a lot more comes to the forefront. We bring our attention to our chest. Right side and left side. Which can involve being aware of breast tissue, but also lungs and heart. Lungs and heart. And the heart sits there in between the two lungs. And every time you inhale, there's a hugging of the heart as the lungs fill. And as you exhale, a little bit of a release around the heart. And so maybe you can also feel under the back side of that reality, the back of the lungs and the back of the heart, the rib cage there. And as you relax the shoulders some of the tension can roll out of the rib cage. And feeling down into the rest of your back, particularly the lower back. And there could be areas that you don't feel anything and it's okay. Right? This is a technique that you build into over time. Wrap your attention around your waist and then to your abdomen again. We've done some work around the abdomen and notice how it feels. You feel through the hips, around your thighs, through the shins and calves. You feel your feet in your shoes. Shoes that touch the ground. And then just for 3 breaths, imagine inhaling from the ground, drawing up through the body to the top of the head. And exhale, down through the body. And you give that back to the room. And then it could become more personal, drawing in that which you feel you need more. And letting go of that which you don't need. And try that just one more time. And on this last exhalation, you then stop manipulating the breath and feel your overall experience, whatever is real. Before we open our eyes, let's take one hand over our heart and then one hand down to our abdomen. And then take 3 deeper breaths. And in this way, perhaps promising or maybe asking ourselves to do this stuff a little bit more. To feel into the reality of where we are. Perhaps moving towards some of these words that bring us into allowing, curiosity, and kindness. And start to open the eyes and move the hands down. That was a little longer than 3 minutes. But we all did such a good job. I had to keep going. All right. So a few moments of any questions that you might have or comments about your experience that you feel to share in this space. Yeah.
When you're starting and your mind is going on tasks or like
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
you. Not that it can have a failure, but it can come with fear.
Yeah, it's easy to do that, right?
When you
Yeah.
see doing it or your instructor doing
Yeah,
it. So like, how do you get yourself, what do you say to yourself? What
Mm-hmm.
do you do to get yourself back?
Train yourself a little bit. So her question, if you didn't hear, is when you're trying to meditate and your mind keeps wandering, what do? Right? So in part, what we do is a little bit of this movement stuff beforehand to give ourselves a warm up into stillness. Because again, this is where marketing fails us at times, because we see the person on the dock. And it looks easy, doesn't it? But it's not. So there's a whole lot going on, right? And that person probably doesn't even meditate. They're whatever, it doesn't matter. But it looks easy, but it's not. So moving through awareness is how we build up a capacity to be still and stay aware, right? So in part, there's things that come beforehand. So it could be just 5 minutes of, I'm gonna move my spine, exhale and inhale, exhale, roll my shoulders, and then I'm gonna sit back and see what happens. So the see what happens means you're not building an expectation. However, we want to feel a little bit more relaxed, and we know some of this stuff works. So you build into your breath awareness. So when you lean back, you do just what we did. You feel what supports you. I'm inhaling and I'm exhaling. And then the task pops up. I'm inhaling and I'm exhaling. Anger comes in. I'm inhaling and I'm exhaling. So did you understand what the answer could be? Nothing. Right? You don't have to do anything about those things. And oftentimes I used to say in the past, let the thought go by like a cloud in the sky. That's a really nice idea. Does it work? No. It took me about a decade to realize that doesn't work. The concept is good, right? But the actual practicality of it doesn't really work. So sometimes what it can mean is that, well, maybe I have to write out my task list before I sit down. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Another aspect is what I've recently been sharing with people, especially when it comes to strong emotion, is put a seat for it. So you're not going to push it away. So I learned this around anger because all my childhood and into my early adult life, I'm not angry. You know, because there's a lot of anger around me, so I didn't want to be the angry person. They're just suppressed and suppressed and suppressed. So come around my mid-40s, probably pre-menopause, I'd be alone and all of a sudden I was enraged. And I'd be going, what the heck is that? No one's here enraging me, but I'm enraged. And so what I started recognizing is all that suppression is now coming up because of hormones. Thanks. It blew my cover, right? It blew my cover. But it also piqued my curiosity, what do I do about this?
Or lack of hormones.
Right, or lack of hormones, right, right.
Think
Right, the imbalance of hormones, right, and stuff. So, what I started learning from another teacher was to literally make a seat. So when I'd meditate is when the anger always came through the door uninvited. So I would put a cushion, or you could put a chair and be like, so whatever is uninvited, go ahead. There's your seat, but guess what? I'm gonna sit here and pay attention to my breath. Right, and you give yourself 1 minute. And then all of a sudden, like my lady, 10 minutes for about a month, and then all of a sudden she was to 20 minutes. You let it build naturally. And so in part, it's not fighting what's happening. It's allowing, but also seeing that this habit or this tendency isn't necessarily getting me where I would like to go. So what can I do beforehand that allows me to go into a place of relaxation? So some people use apps. There's a lot of apps out there. I don't always agree with people counting breath for you. So a counting breath app, I wouldn't necessarily recommend. So is that helpful? Is that a little bit helpful?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I think it's just like I try to do 10 minutes. I have to do it in the bathtub because that's probably the only place I really
Yeah.
relax.
Yeah, that's a good place. Start
I
there.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
just seems like you're just so, I mean, I'm a stressed, anxious person, so it's just like you feel that.
Yeah.
Kind of not ahead, but like more than you would feel if you were doing, if I'm doing something.
If you're busy
like,
doing
yeah.
something. Right,
Because
right.
usually around 5 to 7 is when my anxiety really fixed, but I come to realize it's because I'm finally sitting on the couch doing it.
Resting, right, right. Well, there's a lot of programming in our society that doing nothing is not worthy, right? And so again, we come back to what have we swallowed that's not helpful. And so being busy distributes our energy out there and there's a lot of lack of clarity and awareness around ourselves. So the idea of purposeful work. And so what we can do is while we are doing something, be mindful about that. And so this is what I love telling people, going to the bathroom. And you probably didn't think I was gonna say that one. You probably thought I was gonna say doing the dishes. Yes, but I like talking about going to the bathroom, because it's something we all have to do, because some of you have dishwashers, so it's okay. It's not cheating, but that's okay. But going to the bathroom is often something that we try to get over with very quickly, and yet I had the experience when my mother, she did about 10 years of really weird, wacky health crises, up and down, and I say wacky because we've never found out what any of it was, but a lot of it was extremely serious. So how did she get released from each and every visit? She was able to go to the bathroom. And it was in that, like watching that going to the bathroom. And the healthcare facilities even think that. So I thought going to the bathroom is a place where we can be mindful, because we got to sit there for a little while, right? And sometimes longer than we wish. But it could be a time where we just kind of drop our shoulder and get our feet on the ground and start to breathe. Why not? You can build mindful practice there. Now, that's usually not on Insight Timer or apps, but this is what I'm saying is you build it into micro moments. So like I said, with driving, start to become more aware of how you're holding the steering wheel. When you're washing the dishes, putting them in the dishwasher, all those mundane things, how are you getting dressed? Sometimes I crack up because I am jumping into my clothes. I'm like, I'm throwing myself, I'm like, this isn't useful, right? But it's those micro moments of awareness that then build into the bigger macro moments of here I am in the bathtub, and all of a sudden 10 minutes in, you're like, oh, I could go longer. I better turn on some hot water because the water's getting right. And that's what we do, but we do it out of compassion and kindness for ourselves, because we haven't been taught this from 3. Right? Yeah.
And I just like to offer too that, that idea of what you were saying about, we have this picture that meditating is you have to sit on a cushion and and you have to, clear your mind. And one of the most helpful things I ever was told about meditation is that it's not, yes, there's, clearing the mind is part of it, but it is really about awareness and it's being present.
Yeah.
So, when we were doing this, at one point, my brain started to go, I don't even know what channel I went down, but I was going like off onto a tangent and I was just like, oh, there that goes. I was like, okay, let's go back to the breath. And that is the practice.
That's it.
That's meditation.
Yeah,
So it's not a failure.
No.
You're actually doing it right. If your brain is starting to go off.
Yeah.
You notice that and then you say, oh, hey, brain, come back.
Yeah.
There's a lovely, Thich Nhat Hanh has it's a lovely meditation that I like to give my clients, and it's about breathing. And it's, if you are finding you're wandering with your breath, you can think to yourself, breathing in, I know I'm breathing in, and breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. Because for that minute or so, if you're doing that, it links your mind back to your breath. So you're not only experiencing it, but you're kind of making your brain focus on it.
And so going back to the nervous system and what I was talking more so about the gut is that the nervous system spreads, from central outward. And what we're doing is creating new pathways. And so what we recognize and what Amy was saying is we have these pathways that we're used to treading. And those pathways for the most part has made us feel comfortable in our lives, even though some of them can be uncomfortable, right? But they're known. The known pathway tends to be comfortable in a weird way, right? And so as we start to tread new pathways, it's slightly uncomfortable, it's weird, it's strange territory, but yet as we do it more and more, what happens is that the mind just naturally rests and the mind goes to a place of natural clarity. But if we built so far up into this point, a noisy mind, that's what we're going to be sitting with for a while. So that's where kindness and humility come into play. Oh, there we go. Okay, yeah, wow, there's a lot. Right? And over time, we might see more and more that make us feel like a failure or this isn't working and you give up. But the more we see the gunk, actually, that's the more we succeed in the practice. As we continue to go, we'll enjoy more. Yeah.
I guess I was mistaken. I thought mindfulness was like the awareness of the now, like where you are now.
Yeah,
what
that's
is
it.
happening in your life now. What we're doing is more, I think, meditation or relaxation, whereas what you said about being aware of the steering wheel when you're driving and not thinking about the grocery list.
Yeah,
That's what I thought mindfulness was.
it's all of it.
That, I'm
Yeah.
having a conversation with her. Don't be thinking about, am I gonna get all the dishes in the dishwasher when I get home?
Yeah,
So you're
Yeah.
like,
yeah,
you wanna be in your moment.
in the moment. Yep, that's what all of these practices are. So mindfulness can be a word that describes a certain kind of meditation, but the overarching theme is what are you doing right now? What do you feel right now? Right? And then in our relaxation practice, it was recognizing what you actually are feeling. And that's
And then you've got to expand that into other parts.
you keep expanding and you keep your appetite grows for it because you assimilate things differently and you're able to let go of other things differently. And so it's sort of like when you think of pet peeves, right? If you fight them, I want to get rid of that pet peeve, it's going to come on harder, right? And so this is the aspect of gentleness and compassion as we see we have a pet peeve or whatever it might be, a habit, is we recognize the sensation underneath it. What drives that? And then realize again, in our entire life, it always has been a mind-body practice. Of I crave this, I don't want that, so on and so forth. It's just we haven't used techniques maybe that continue to deepen that link and deepen our understanding of the actual control that we do have. Say impulse control. Right? Yeah, so it's all mindfulness and it's all awareness. And then there's certain techniques within that that you can use for your own benefit. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes.
Just curious, so you were very adamant about aerobics and teaching it.
Yeah.
You probably learned everything so fast when you were so young and you're very good at it. And then you switched to yoga.
I know, right? Yeah. Oh, you wanna hear why? You wanna hear why? I had a very severe accident at the age of 17. Even though that didn't stop me from teaching aerobics, so I'll make this very quick, so I know we're running out of time. But I was hospitalized for 2 weeks. I had shattered my femur, and I should have died. I'll just put it that way. I should have died, but I didn't. So whatever happened in the universe, it said, no, you're gonna keep going. And I ended up out of the hospital after 2 months, going back to teaching aerobics on crutches. So I was a determined young thing. Yeah, probably wasn't the best thing, but I was teaching on crutches. Oh my God. And it was around I was 19, and my mother had given me a book, and it was all about holistic health. And so it talked about Tai Chi and acupuncture, and yoga was in there, and it talked about emotions, the body, and breath. And it was through reading that I thought, okay, I'll try it, but this is gonna be boring, you know, because there's no jazzy music and leg warmers. Although I did wear leg warmers for a little while. Yeah, I was really connected. Yeah. They were really good. And honestly, my first class, I fell in love. And it was the right time, the right place, the right instructor. And I started bringing a notebook and writing things down while I was there. And so then I started receiving some attention from the directors and guiding me more and teaching. And so it was something that was meant to happen, but I had to read a little bit more about it. And my mom was saying that I think this will be helpful because I was having a lot of back problems from that imbalance of cracked pelvis and all that. And aerobics was fine, but it wasn't necessarily helping me. And I was a runner too and all that. And, yeah. So I fell in love, and my directors were great at that time. And then I was not satisfied with the job I had, because then I went into being a jeweler, and I realized I really want to be in this sort of service work and being with people. And so I put my job in. Yeah, I know.
You were so young when you made that, you know,
That significant choice.
Yeah.
I found exactly what I've been looking for. And it was this whole thing of spirituality, religion, movement, body, like, here I am, and this is how I express it.
It's funny you say that because I've had the same, I'm 62.
Uh-huh,
I've had the same hairstylist for like 30 years.
okay.
And Dawn's a sweetheart, but
My name. Yeah.
I remember after she had her son. I don't know if it was the same way, but it came out more. She was just like unhappy, and she wanted to be vegan, and she was all stressed out about. And I get it too, how they kill animals, the whole 9 yards. All of a sudden, she did this big change. And every time I went, I saw a better Dawn, a happier Dawn. And I'm like, Dawn, what are you doing? What have you been doing the last year? Oh man, I've been doing yoga. I said, what? And she's already like this, you know, she still is like this and this,
Yeah.
and just cute as a button. I look at her online and I'm like, whoa, I cannot believe the moves this girl can do. Whoa, I didn't think your body could even flex in them positions and stay. I go, who does that? Who takes them? Oh, my husband, he loves filming.
Oh,
So, but she'll show
okay.
little things on her Facebook page
Yeah.
to try to relax and meditate like you.
Yeah.
And she is so happy.
Yeah.
And she said, Nan, I go every morning and do yoga. She does it for like an hour and a half. She loves it. She said it saved her life.
Yeah.
Just,
I could say something close to the same. you know,
Finding,
very-
she said
Yeah,
she found her inner self.
that's right, that's right.
Yep.
Yep,
I'm
and,
like,
and that is, if we come away from that language that might be confusing to people, is we tap into our physiology.
yeah,
We tap into our nervous system, we tap into our blood flow, and we tap into the
funny you
intelligence of our
say
body,
that, because she
right?
says.
Our body's
once,
intelligent, and it's
Yeah.
talking to us all the time. And there's a really good book that was written by a gentleman who worked at the VA called Your Body Keeps the Score. And it's about trauma and all that, and that's it. And so how do we become happy? It's not necessarily through tricky movements with our body,
Right.
whatever, like I've gone away from a lot of that. But it's by being in our body and befriending our body and seeing, I'll never forget something Oprah Winfrey said. It was this going like 10 years ago. My body got me here.
Yep.
She's so publicly gained and lost weight as this
Yeah.
like, ideal of health when we know it's not the ideal of health at all. But she's finally said at one point, my body got me here. I have to be grateful. And I've always hung on to that because here we are, right? So whatever our body has done, and a lot of uncertainty, we're always living in uncertainty. That's one of the main truths of life is we never know, right? How can we find contentment, maybe joy, maybe a little bit of relaxation? And so it's through any of these practices that help us become more aware of where we are in space, maybe where our thought processes are, and then taking up some of the tools that help assist us in the direction we want to go. Whether that's needing more back strength or needing more meditation or relaxation. So there's a lot of classes out there. I would suggest looking though and seeing who the people are that are teaching, because any yoga class is not a good yoga class. My cards are up there, so if you want to grab them as a resource and I can guide you. Also, I have some free class passes for the Himalayan Institute that I teach out of. You can do online or come in person. It's a lot of different kinds of classes, and our age range of teachers, I think, is from 25 to 80. So, hey, you can find a teacher around your age too. But I think any of these practices, you got to find someone that clicks with you, that you drive with their personality. They don't necessarily have to live the same kind of life you do, but they speak a language that you like, but I like to be a resource for people too, being that I do help run these teacher training programs, so I know people in different areas, and someone that might fit what you need. So you can call me, you can email me, text me, whatever you want to do. Okay, so I know we're out of time, we're over time. Thank you, everybody. And,
Before everybody departs, I just want to thank you again for coming. As a reminder, we actually do have wellness classes here in our facility almost every day of the week. I think Monday through Friday anyway. And yoga is one of them. We also offer Tai Chi, and like Julia said, and I think a great demonstration of the conversation is that these kinds of practices are available to you at any point. As people who've been impacted by breast cancer, possibly other cancers or other medical conditions or diagnoses, just because we don't have to be in what we think of as perfect health to take advantage of these things. In fact, these are often the things that help get us back to where we need to be or help maintain us wherever we are. And so, as Julia said, there's lots of great resources out there. There's a wonderful teacher out of England online